We're in part 3 of our series, Me and My Big Mouth. Now, for those of you who've been with us these last couple weeks, it's been very helpful, hasn't it? Because our big mouths can get us into a lot of trouble. So week 1, we looked at James, the book of James, and we learned how we could be slow to speak, quick to listen, and slow to speak. And as a result, we'll be slower to get angry. And I think that was super helpful. If we know how to just stop talking sometimes and listen, I think we can accomplish so much more in our communication with one another. And then last week, Greg talked about complaining. Our grace groups had a lot to say about complaining. I'm sure yours did too. But we learned that even if our circumstances are less than what we desire, if we still can change our perspective and have a hope-filled, positive attitude. Before I get started today, I'm sure you heard the big news. There was big news that came out this week, really big news. I think it might have actually been the week before. Time magazine, I think, broke the news, and then all the other news outlets jumped on the bandwagon, and it was pretty shocking. It was appalling, really. I'm still trying to wrap my head around it, but Prince Harry and his new bride went to a wedding, and guess what? He showed up wearing a hole in his shoe. Prince Harry had a hole in his shoe. Now, when this makes headlines, this goes to show the propensity in our culture towards gossip. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Now, before you check out and say, oh, gossip doesn't apply to me. When I said, did you hear the big news? All of your eyes looked at me. So all of us, we can just collectively say, all of us have this desire to have the inside scoop, to know information, because with information comes power, and then we feel like we're powerful people. So let's all just look at gossip today with the consideration that, yes, we all are inclined to be lured in. As much as we don't want to admit it, we can all fall into gossip's snare. So we're going to look at gossip today. And we're going to be looking before I get started, I want to say, because gossip is really common. In fact, psychologists did some research, and they showed that 60% of adult conversations involve conversations with people that are not present. So in the workplace, in your family, in your social circles, 60% of your conversations with your coworkers and friends and family members are about people that aren't even there. And they said that most of those conversations are passing judgment, making assumptions, and being critical and gossiping towards other people. So 60%. So we need to take this seriously, because gossip at its core seeks to put others down to make the speaker feel good. So gossip tries to make the speaker feel good so that the person, the object of the gossip, feels less than the speaker. So we're going to be looking at several scriptures today from the book of Proverbs. Now, Proverbs is an Old Testament book. It reads a little bit differently than the rest of the Bible. It's not a historical account. These are wise sayings written by King Solomon. Now, King Solomon was considered one of the wisest people around. He was known for his vast wisdom about animals and nature and birds and people and human behavior, and he wrote a lot of these wise sayings down in the book of Proverbs. So when you read Proverbs, it's instruction for us to read it. You don't read you can read the whole chapter, but you're supposed to read the phrase, you're supposed to pause, think about it, consider it, and then apply it to daily living. So the amazing thing is that even though these were written 3,000 years ago, they still have so much to speak to us today. They are so relevant, as you'll see. So let's read these scriptures today thoughtfully. We'll pause, we'll reflect, and we'll consider how they can impact our life and we can make those adjustments in our speech. Okay, so the first one is Proverbs 18:8. It says, "The words of a gossip are choice morsels. They go down to the inmost parts. So choice morsels. Now, I brought some choice morsels with me this morning. These little M&Ms. Now, all of you are going, oh, I didn't have breakfast. They're tiny, they're choice, they look good, and they taste pretty good. In fact, I might think just one isn't enough. I might want to go back for more, and then even more, and then before you know it, I probably would have a stomach ache, right? But they're choice morsels, and gossip is being likened to choice morsels. I gotta swallow my candy. I'm hoping I don't gag. I have a very sensitive gag reflex, and at the most inconvenient times, I find myself in conversations and I can't stop gagging. The words of a gossip are choice morsels. Choice morsels, they're like candy. Now, when you go to the grocery store, and I'm checking out my groceries in the line, I look at, and I'm getting up to close to the cashier. I don't see, bananas and Forbes magazine. What is right there when you're checking out at the cashier? It's a bunch of candy, right? And tabloid gossip magazines. They're put together because they know how irresistible both of them are. And 3,000 years ago, they didn't have grocery stores. They didn't say, oh, let's make this illusion because candy is like gossip and let's put them together. No, we know that. We know the allure. We know the power. And candy is appealing. It's something that is enticing. We want it. We crave it. Gossip, Solomon is saying, is like choice morsels. Another translation refers to gossip as tasty. So it's something that looks good, something that tastes good. If it was something that didn't, then we wouldn't have any trouble with it, right? We would go, oh, that's just gossip. We don't want anything. But when we hear, did you hear about so-and-so? Hey, did you hear about so-and-so? Or have you heard the big news? Then we all we want to know. It's tasty, it's choice, it's alluring, it's irresistible. Another translation says the rumors are like dainty morsels, but they sink deep into the heart. So it's not something that just that doesn't have any effect. It sinks deep into our hearts. When I was a child growing up on the playground, they used to go, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words would never hurt me. And I think that is so not true. Words hurt. In fact, many of you are still living under the power of negative words that were spoken over your life as a child, or even in your adult life, in your workplace, or the gossip in the workplace, or gossip in your family. Those words sink deep into our hearts. They affect us at our innermost being. And that's what gossip does. It's not something to just brush off. Oh, it's just the gossip. It's just gossip. Let's just sit around and gossip. It sinks deep into our hearts. It divides relationships. It destroys community. It is a dangerous thing. And it's become even more prevalent now. When I was in high school, the gossip, the way, for something to go viral, it would be passing a note that you would have to hand, right? And you would pass it, and then it would get around the whole school, and the whole school would know, and it was like, oh my gosh, and you were so hurt and embarrassed. But nowadays, it's even, for something to go viral, it's on Snapchat, Instagram, Facebook. You post something, and it goes viral. You hit share, and it's out there even more. The effects of gossip in our society are even more prevalent than they were a few decades ago. It's like cancer that runs through our relational circles. It runs through ravages our workplaces. And we're going to talk today about how to avoid it and how to manage it when we find ourselves in those conversations that are starting to get a little uncomfortable for us. So we've become really good at disguising gossip. Here are a few ways that I've heard it disguised. Sometimes people will disguise it as a prayer request. They'll call somebody. I've just got to tell you, we need to pray for so-and-so. Their marriage is on the rocks. Let's call our grace group and rally these people to let them know that we need to pray for so-and-so because they're having difficulty in their marriage. I know it's kind of sad, but we do that. We disguise it as a prayer request. Or sometimes people will say, well, it's true, so I can share it. It's true. But everything that's true doesn't need to be said. Everything that's true, everything you say should be true, but not everything that's true should be said. We have to be able to discern what is for public consumption and private consumption before we post it, before we share it, before we tweet it, before we text it, before we call it, before we share it in our grace groups or share it at our workplace. We have to be careful. It may be true, but should it be said? Is it appropriate? Or is it just a choice morsel that gives us more power over other people? We have to be aware of that. So everything that's said should be true, but not everything that's true should be said. So our tongues the Bible says that our tongues, our mouths, have the power for life and for death. So do you want to be known as someone who speaks life, someone who lifts others up, who encourages people, or you want to be known as someone that exposes people's weaknesses, cuts people down, and divides relationships? That's what we're going to look at today. Because even more importantly, gossip offends God. He wants us to build each other up. We're called to be the light of the world as Christ followers. And if we're the ones that are devouring each other and tearing each other down, it doesn't reflect very positively on the God that we say we're wanting to love and follow. So who does gossip hurt? Who does gossip hurt? The first one, gossip hurts the person it's spoken about. And I think this is a no-brainer, right? Gossip hurts the person. When you gossip, you are hurting somebody. You are exposing something about them that shouldn't be exposed. Gossip makes the speaker look good and the object of the gossip look bad. Proverbs explains it this way. In Proverbs 16, a troublemaker plants seeds of strife. So think of that. What picture does that give? A troublemaker, someone who's gossiping, is sowing seeds. It may just be something really subtle, but it's a seed, and it goes and it begins to plant division in a relationship or in a workplace. It's a seed that over time begins to grow and divide and destroy. It plants seeds of strife, and gossip separates the best of friends. And some of you know exactly what that verse is talking about. If you've lived in this world and worked in this world and gone to school in this world, chances are you have felt the sting of gossip. You know somebody has shared something, you told them in confidence, and they shared it with somebody else. Or you told somebody that something you were struggling with, and they went and posted it on social media. Or they went to their other friends at school and they divided people against you and they spread gossip. You know the sting of gossip. Gossip hurts the person it's spoken about. It divides and destroys relationships. Gossip also hurts the listener. Now you may think, well, I'm just listening to it. I'm not partaking in it, so I don't have a problem. Gossip hurts the listener. It hurts you to listen to gossip. And let me explain. You may be wondering, how is this possible? Proverbs 17:4 says that wrongdoers eagerly listen to gossip. So it's not just the people speaking gossip, it's the people that are listening to it. Gossip and liars pay close attention to slander. So this proverb is saying that if you gossip or if you listen to gossip, you are equally guilty as someone who is participating in it. You know, it's been said, what you permit, you promote. So if you're going to sit and listen to it and not say anything or stand up and do anything about it, then you are giving approval to that behavior. So what does this look like? In your workplace, in the lounge at your office, and the women are starting to talk bad about so-and-so that works in the department next to them. If you just sit there and allow that to continue, this scripture says you are participating with them. In the school, in the lunchroom, if the if the kids are all just talking bad about one girl or what she's wearing and I can't believe this and that, if you sit and just allow it, you're participating and equally is guilty. What you permit, you promote. So don't be someone eager to listen to gossip. And don't think for a moment that if they stop talking about them, that when they leave, they're not going to start talking about you. Right? When someone is gossiping, that doesn't mean that they're only going to gossip about that one person. So don't think that you're out of the clear. So if you allow someone to speak poorly about your friend, bash your boss, or a family member, you're promoting what they're saying by your lack of action, by your lack of standing up and saying something. So it's wrong to listen to gossip. So first, gossip hurts the person it's spoken about. Gossip hurts the listener. And also gossip hurts the speaker. Now this is a no-brainer, right? Gossip hurts the speaker. If we're going to speak gossip, we all know that when we hear people that just go on and bash and divide people at our workplace or in our school, we can probably all agree that gossip has affected them in their soul. And that we probably don't trust them with information, right? And as a result, they're probably not going to enjoy the quality of friendships and relationships that most people would enjoy because nobody will trust them. Right. So Proverbs says it this way. Once again, Proverbs is helping us out. And this is 3,000 years ago. When arguing with your neighbor, don't betray another person's secret. Others may accuse you of gossip, and you will never regain your good reputation. Now, you may have sat in a circle where you know somebody has done this, and you've seen how they've lost friendships, how they are less trustworthy, how you are not going to share you know the people that you can share things with and the people you can't share things with. You know that when they leave, they're going to go tell somebody, and you know that you just can't trust them. So Proverbs says, don't betray another person's secret. You'll never regain trust. Makes it harder and harder to have relationships with you if you betray confidence, betray trust, and gossip. And people will look at you differently. They'll say, I wonder what you say about me when I'm not around. Or I better be careful of what I say because I don't know who you're going to tell it with. So most people don't look at someone who gossips and go, man, I want to be like them. Tearing people down with their words, always being divisive. Man, that's a good friend. That's somebody I want to emulate. No, you usually want to begin distancing yourself, keeping distance and guarding yourself. So how do we avoid it? How do we avoid it? We can agree that it's in the workplace, it's in the schools, it's in our families, it's in our relational circles. How do we manage it? How do we avoid it when we find ourselves getting scarily close? Or I don't feel comfortable with the direction this conversation is going. What do we do? What do we do? I'm going to give you a few things that you can say, questions that you can ask, things that will help you and equip you and give you the tools you need to nip gossip in the bud. All right? So the first one, avoiding gossip, guard your ears. Guard your ears. I came across an article this week, and the title of it said, Psychologists Reveal the One Phrase to Stop Gossiping Immediately. I was like, oh my gosh, I got to read this. And I'm sure you guys want to know what this one question is. It's a great question. This is going to be super helpful for you. In the article, psychologists say that when someone is trying to involve you in a cycle of gossip, here is the one question to ask. Here it is. Are you ready? Got your pens out? Why are you telling me this? Why are you telling me this? They say that will stop gossip right away because it will let them know that you are probably not willing to engage in the gossip. So why are you telling me this? Some of you may be going, well, you know what? This is Hawaii. We don't really confront people. That's kind of in your face. I don't know if I could do that. Let me give you a softer approach. This is an amazing question. This is another question that you can ask that I think is equally as powerful, maybe even more so than that first question. But here's a slightly different question with a little bit softer approach. Here it is. have you had the chance to talk to so-and-so about this? Brilliant question, right? Have you had the chance to talk to so-and-so about this? So when your coworker comes and said, I can't believe, did you hear about them? And can you believe this? And what do you think about this? You can say, have you had the chance to talk to them about it? Usually, most of the time, they'll say, no. And it will put an end to that conversation. And then you can follow up with saying, you know what? I think that's a conversation you need to go have with them. Brilliant, right? And you might want to know where this amazing question comes from. It actually comes from the Bible. So helpful. Jesus gives us such practical wisdom and advice he shares with his disciples in Matthew 18. This is what he says: when you have a conflict with someone, if your brother or sister sins, go and point out their fault just between the two of you. Okay? Underline that. Highlight that. Just between the two of you. If they listen to you, you have won them over. So I love this scripture because, first of all, it says, just between the two of you. Now, we tend to do it the other way around. Instead of just between the two of us, we go to the coworker in the cubicle next to us, or we go to the friend at the lunch table next to us, or we go to everybody else on our work project team except for that person. And then what we begin to do is we begin to sow little seeds, little tasty morsels of doubt and division and destruction in our community. If you've got a problem with someone at work, you don't go to the people on the project and go, what do you think about so-and-so? I'm having a hard time with this. Are you having a hard time with this? No, because what that does is it begins to plant little dainty morsels, seeds in their mind of, I don't know if I could trust this person. Oh yeah, you know what? They are kind of not working out the way that I had hoped. They're not maybe doing it the way that I would want. And you begin to sow seeds of division and discord in your workplace. Instead, you go to them directly and you talk to them. And you do it not with an attitude of judgment. He says, listen, Jesus is reminding his disciples, if they listen to you, you have won them over. So the goal is not to be right. The goal is not to pass judgment and say, here's why you're wrong and here's all the problems I have with you. The goal and the attitude is to win them over. Brilliant. Jesus is so brilliant in the way he teaches us to interact with one another. And he says, and then he doesn't stop there. He goes on in verse 16 because he says, I know not everybody's going to listen. People are just going to keep arguing. He said, but if they will not listen, take one or two others along so that every matter may be established on the testimony of 2 or 3 witnesses. So that's the second step, not the first step. In the first step, nowadays, we usually leave the person that we have the problem with completely out of the conversation. And we go to 2 or 3 people. And then it gets around to the other person eventually. Jesus says, go talk to that person directly. And then if that doesn't work, then you go and you bring somebody with you to talk to them. That's how Jesus encourages us to deal with that. So let's guard our ears. Let's guard our ears. Have you had the chance to talk to so-and-so about this? Great question. The next, in Proverbs 20, alludes to this. A gossip betrays a confidence, so avoid anyone who talks too much. So there may be seasons where you just have to separate yourself from a relationship because there's just gossip won't stop. Okay? So guard your ears. The second thing is close your mouth. Close your mouth. This is super helpful. Super, super helpful. In week 1, Greg talked about it. Quick to listen, slow to speak. Close your mouth. Proverbs 21:23 says it this way. Watch your tongue, keep your mouth shut, and you'll stay out of trouble. It's great. I think everybody should memorize that verse. If we can get that, not just here, but in our heart, we will spare society so much pain, so much destruction, so much conflict. If we can learn to watch our tongue, keep our mouth shut, we'll stay out of a lot of trouble. We'll stay out of a lot of trouble. So that's a great one to memorize. Now, if you find yourself that you are just going to burst, somebody tells you something and they say, don't tell anybody, I think that's even harder, right? When somebody says, if I tell you this, you can't tell anybody. That makes it so much harder to keep the secret. At least it does for me. I'm like, how am I going to do this? If somebody tells me, confides in me, you know what, I'm expecting a baby, but we're not telling anybody yet. I'm like, oh my gosh, how am I going to keep this secret? And I'm just like trying to keep the secret, keeping the secret. So if you find yourself in that situation where you are just going to burst, think of this scripture in Luke 6, another advice Jesus gives to his disciples. Do to others as you would have them do to them. Brilliant principle. In Grace Kids, your kids always learn. One of the main things we try to teach your children in children's ministry is treat others the way you would want to be treated. Treat others the way you would want to be treated. So if you share something in confidence with a friend, you would want them to show the same courtesy and confidence towards you. So treat others the way you would want to be treated. So here's another question to ask. And this is another great question. Would you want someone speaking the same way about you if you were not around? Would you want someone speaking the same way about you if you weren't around? So that goes, at work, the way we talk about our spouses, school, the way we talk about our brothers and sisters. Would we want them to talk about us in that way if we were not around? It's common courtesy. It's speaking with grace, speaking with tact, and honoring people as Jesus says, do to others as you would want them to do to you. So would you want them to speak about you in that same way when you're not present? Great rule of thumb, great question for us to consider, because when we go out, there's going to be a lot of opportunities for us. We're in community. We work in workplaces. We go to school. We have a lot of conversations. And there's always that opportunity for us to share more than we should and to be unrestrained in our speech. And Proverbs says, watch your mouth and you'll stay out of trouble. In our grace groups, we love grace groups, and this is a great series for you to jump into small group community if you're not there yet, because we do strive to provide a safe place for you, a place where you know that what you share there, they're not going to go tweeting about or texting about or entering prayer requests about. It's a safe place, but at the same time, what we bring into the grace group should also be spoken with the same grace about other people that aren't there. So if you come in with problems about your boss, you need to be careful with how you share those problems with your boss, with the same grace and respect that you would want somebody to share about you. Watch your mouth, guard your ears, and you'll stay out of trouble. And then the next one, and this is our last one, and it's really, I think, one of the more important, probably the most important one, is clean your heart. Clean your heart. We've talked a lot about our big mouths, but really, if we're to boil it down, the problem with our big mouths is our sin-filled heart. Our hearts are sinful. Our hearts are drawn to gossip. Our hearts are drawn to complaining. Our hearts are drawn to arguing. Our hearts are drawn to cynicism and criticalness and judgment and gossip and all of these things. It's a heart issue. So until we fix our heart and we clean our heart, we're going to just be managing our mouth. So we have to as people who love God and want to follow him and want to honor him and want to give people a reason to love God and honor God and follow God, we have to do this work on keeping our hearts clean. We have to clean our hearts. Matthew says it this way: whatever is in your heart determines what you say. So if you find yourself, you've got a lot of complaining coming out of your mouth, it's a heart issue. It's a gratitude issue. If you find a lot of anger coming out of your mouth, there's probably a forgiveness issue there somewhere. If you find a lot of gossip coming out of your mouth, there's a heart issue that God is trying to get at. And we need to be aware as people who are seeking to honor Jesus and follow God, that we want to deal with our hearts because we want to live in a way that honors God and pleases God. So why do we share gossip? I think sometimes we share gossip because if I can talk about somebody else's lack of fashion sense, or the hole that they showed up to a wedding with a hole in their shoe, or I can talk about somebody else's problems on social media, or somebody else's bad marriage, or somebody else's addiction, then I don't have to talk about mine. And I feel a little bit better about the mess in my life when I can talk about other people's mess. And it's a way of propping ourselves up and making other people look bad so that we feel a little bit better about how we feel and how we look. They say hurting people hurt people. And I think that's true. And I think as people who love Jesus and want to follow Jesus, we can be people that keep our hearts clean so that we can be the ones that build each other up, so that when we walk into the workplace, we're the ones that are speaking life. We're the ones that are encouraging. At school, when we see kids that are just bashing each other, we can be those that encourage and support and speak life. Because if gossip, I think usually the person behind gossip is pushing people down so that they can feel a little bit better about themselves. So as we close today, we're going to look at one more thing. So gossip claims that I am strong and you are weak. And it seeks to push other people's down to make themselves feel a little bit better. But the good news of Jesus is that what the gospel message is, that I am weak because he is strong. Jesus is strong. So, yeah, our big mouths are a mess. Yeah, we don't have everything figured out. But greater is Jesus in me. He is strong. I am weak, but he is strong. So I'm not at the center of my life anymore. I'm not at the center trying to make myself look good in the eyes of everybody else. I'm trying to make Jesus look good. Paul said it this way in 2 Corinthians. That is why, for Christ's sake, I delight in weaknesses, in insults, in hardships, in persecutions, in difficulties. For when I am weak, then I am strong. So it's when we take a step back that Jesus can be strong in and through our life. So as we surrender our life to Jesus, he comes in and he cleans our heart. He transforms our life. And as a result, he transforms our big mouths. He begins to change us and transform us. And we go from people that are critical and complaining and gossiping to people that are speaking life and encouragement and hope, to people who really desperately need it in our workplace and in our schools. So let's be people this week, when we go into these circles where we find ourselves in the workplace or at the lunch table, on the college campus, where we find ourselves in these situations where the conversation is starting to get a little uncomfortable, and we're reminded about this message today, we can ask these questions. Have you talked to so-and-so about this? Have you talked to so-and-so about this? But then also respond in our conversation with in mind, how would I want them talking about me if I were not here? Those two questions, I think, will really help us as we navigate and learn to guard our ears, to watch our mouths, stay out of trouble by keeping our hearts clean. So the gossip claims I am strong because they're weak. But the gospel of Jesus Christ proclaims that I am weak because he is strong.